Welcome to Edgecore Enterprise Switches training program. In this video, we are going to introduce the basic knowledge of Edgecore Enterprise Switches. Switch basics. When you get a new Ethernet switch, you may wonder how to use it. Don't worry. This chapter will guide you through the basic usage of Edgecore's Ethernet switches. You will learn the following sections to help you operate the switch smoothly. First, Edgecore switch introduction. Second, management IP setting. Third, file system, including the firmware update and the configuration backup and restore. Fourth, reset to default and reload switch. Edgecore Enterprise Switch Introduction. Edgecore is a renowned manufacturer of network equipment that provides high-performance and reliable solutions for enterprise networks of various scales and demands. In the first section, we'll have a basic introduction to let you know the components of Edgecore Enterprise Switches. Here are the 4 topics in this section. First, basic introduction. Second, switch front panel. Third, switch rear panel. Fourth, the transceivers and cables that can be used on the Edgecore switch. Edgecore switches provide a complete set of advanced software features that can easily satisfy the demands of small and medium businesses. First, let's look at the system architecture. The switch hardware is in the lowest layer, and then is the bootloader. We use Reboot to bring up the switch operating system for all hardware components. And we can see the embedded firmware, which use the high-performance ASIC and chipset to process specific tasks. For example, the Ethernet MAC or PHY ASIC. Our switches offer powerful features for both Layer 2 and Layer 3 networking, such as STP, VLAN, LACP, 802.1x, LLDP, IGMP, static root, RIP, and BGP. Moreover, we also care about scalability and flexibility, so you can expand your network as your organization grows. Let's begin by exploring the front panel of Edgecore switch. We use Edgecore ECS415028P as an example. The front panel is the most visible part of the switch, typically featuring an array of ports and indicator lights. These ports are designed to connect a variety of devices such as computers, servers, and more. For example, the front panel of the ECS415028P is equipped with 24 RJ45 1GB ports and 4 10GB SFP Plus ports. Additionally, there is a management port on the front panel, enabling the system administrators to configure and manage the switch either locally or remotely. And this interface empowers the system administrators to easily set up and monitor the network, ensuring smooth operations. The ECS415028P also supported an RJ45 serial console port on the front panel. System administrators can configure and manage the switch directly, or connect it to the console server for remote management. And there is one USB flash slot. You can copy the configuration file, or switch firmware via USB flash. Next, let's take a look at the rear panel of the Edgecore ECS415028P switch. The power interface connects the power adapter, which supplies the switch with electricity. Let's explore the transceivers and cables that the Edgecore ECS415028P switch supports. Transceivers connect optical fiber links between switches, enabling high-speed data transmission. Different types of transceivers support varying transmission distances and data rates, catering to a wide range of networking needs. Furthermore, the switch supports various types of network cables, including Ethernet cables and optical fiber cables. These cables can be selected based on specific requirements and network topologies, ensuring reliability and performance. As you can see from this slide, the ECS4150 switch datasheet mentions that the switch supports SFP plus 10G uplink ports, and we can find the specific model of 10G SFP plus transceiver for these ports on our website. As the demand for high-speed Ethernet increases, Edgecore offers a full range of managed switches that can support 10, 40, and 100 gigabits per second. These switches can meet different deployment requirements and provide optimal performance. Let's use the Edgecore EPS 202 switch as an example. The switch datasheet states that the switch can support 410G, or 25G SFP28, and two 100G QSFP28 ports, and we can find the matching transceivers on the Edgecore website. The Edgecore pluggable optical transceivers provide fiber and copper connectivity over our entire range of products. Edgecore also offers SFP, SFP+, SFP28, QSFP+, QSFP28, QSFP-DD, and packet optical pluggable transceivers that comply with industry-standard networking regulations. Our optical transceivers allow a product the flexibility to expand by media type, copper, or fiber. By different speed, 1 giga, 10 giga, 25 giga, 40 giga, 100 giga, and 400 giga. And by distance, from 100 meters to 120 kilometers. From the example of ECS4150, you can see the supported transceiver models are ET5402SR, ET5402LR, and ET5402RJ45. For more detailed information, you can find the transceiver and switch compatible list on the Edgecore website. Edgecore provides DAC and AOC cables to connect our entire range of products. The Edgecore DAC and AOC cables grant the flexibility to expand by different speeds: 10 giga, 25 giga, 40 giga, 100 giga, and 400 giga. And by different distances, from 1 meter to 100 meters. Edgecore also offers breakout solutions. For example, one 400 giga divided into four 100 giga connectors, one 100 giga divided into four 25 giga connectors, or one 40 giga divided into four 10 giga connectors that comply with industry-standard networking regulations. From the example of ECS4150, you can see the supported cable models are ET5402 DAC and ET5402 AOC-XM. For more detailed information, you can find the transceiver and switch compatible list on the Edgecore website. Edgecore switch built-in a network management agent. The agent offers a variety of management options, including SNMP, SSH, and a web-based interface. A PC may also be connected directly to the switch via a local serial console for configuration and monitoring via a command line interface. For example, the CLI commands. Edgecore switch also supports cloud management. The system administrator can easily manage switch devices anytime and anywhere. Before using these management measures, you need to set up the management IP address for your switch. In this section, we will show you how to set up an IP address for managing the switch. The switches support management ports. For example, Craft port, or Data port, VLAN interface port as the management interface for remote accessing. After you configured the management IP address on corresponding interfaces, you can remote access our switch via Telnet, SSH, or web. Please note that you may also need to establish a default gateway between this device and management stations, or other devices that exist on another network segment if routing is not enabled. You can use the interface command to specify the IP interface type and enter interface configuration mode to configure the specified IP address. You can also use the no form to remove the IP addresses. Of course, you could also configure the IP interface with DHCP mode to obtain an IP address from the DHCP server. This page shows an example of how to configure IP addresses for the Craft port and VLAN interface on the switch. Step 1. Enter the interface that you want to configure the IP address in the management port. In our example, is the Craft port. Step 2. Configure the IP address by typing the command 192.168.2.10/24. Step 3. Enter the interface that you want to configure the IP address in the VLAN interface. In our example here, is VLAN 1. Step 4. Configure the IP address by typing the command 192.168.1.10/24. Step 5. After configuring the IP address, You can use the show command to check if your configuration is correct or not. You can type the show interface to show related VLAN and CraftPort settings. As a result, you can see IP addresses are set in interface VLAN 1 and CraftPort. When you want to remove the IP address, use the No form to disable it, just like the example. The IP address of the CraftPort and the management VLAN are both deleted by No IP address command. You can use the Show IP Interface command to check the management IP address has been removed. The file system stores the firmware and the configuration files in the flash memory. In this section, you will learn how to upgrade firmware and backup or restore system configuration file. This page shows the list of files in the CLI command, including operation code and configuration files. ECS4150_v1.1.0.10.bix is the runtime operation code image file. Factory_default_config.cfg is the configuration file used for factory reset. Startup1.cfg is the configuration file used for system reboot. To delete a file, you can use the delete command followed by the file name. For example, to delete the file named backup2, you can type delete file name backup2. However, please note that some files are protected and cannot be deleted. These files are essential for restoring the system to factory default, or they have been specified for system startup, such as factory_default_config.cfg and startup1.cfg. You will get an error message if you try to delete them. On this page, you can see the files in the file system through the web GUI. These files include the operation code and the configuration file. ECS4150_v1.2.0.6.bix is the runtime operation code. Factory_default_config.cfg is the configuration file used for factory reset. Startup1.cfg is the configuration file used for system reboot. In this section, you will learn how to upgrade the firmware of your switch. It includes the basic introduction and the example of the CLI setting. This table shows the method and transmission protocols for uploading and downloading configuration files and operation codes. We can transfer data using various transmission protocols or a physical method. The transmission protocols include FTP, SFTP, FTPS, SCP, and HTTP, while the physical method is through USB disk. CLI commands do not support the HTTP protocol. WebGUI does not support FTPS, SCP, or USB disk. Choosing a different transmission protocol will change the options in CLI commands. We will show you how in the following slide. We can use the copy command to move a code image or configuration file between the switch's flash memory and an FTP, TFTP server, or a USB memory stick. The following example shows how to download firmware from TFTP server to our switch. Step 1. Enter the copy TFTP file. Step 2. Input the IP address of TFTP server. Step 3. Choose the type of file. In this case, we need to input 2. Step 4. Input the source file name in TFTP server and then input the file name in the file system of the switch. Step 5. You will get a success message when the file transfer is completed. The following steps show how to download firmware from SCP server to our switch. Step 1. Enter the copy SCP file. Step 2. Input the IP address of SCP server. Step 3. Input username and password for authentication. Step 4. Choose the type of file. In this case, we need to input 2. Step 5. Input the source file name in SCP server and input the file name in the file system of the switch. Step 6. You will get a success message when the file transfer is completed. Now, we will demonstrate how to upgrade firmware using HTTP in WebGUI. Step 1. Click System, then File. Step 2. Select Copy from the action list. Step 3. Select FTP Upload, HTTP Upload, or TFTP Upload as the file transfer method. In this case, we select HTTP Upload. Step 4. Set the file type to operation code. Step 5. Enter the name of the file to download. Step 6. Select a file on the switch to overwrite or specify a new file name. Step 7. Click Apply. It will take a few seconds to upload the firmware. When the upload is completed, you will see a success message on the screen. You can select Show from the action list to check if the firmware has been uploaded successfully. After we download new firmware from TFTP or SCP server to switch, we need to use the boot system command to specify the new firmware to start up our system. We can use the boot command to check if the new firmware has been specified to be the bootup code, and then use the reload command to reboot the system. The switch can only store 2 operation code files because of the flash memory size limit. However, the maximum number of saved configuration files depends on available flash memory. The amount of available flash memory can be checked by using the dir command. We can also back up our configuration files to a remote server using different file transmission protocols such as TFTP, FTP, SFTP, FTPS, SCP, and HTTP. You will learn 2 ways to backup or restore your configuration file in this section. The first way is to backup and restore your configuration file using the local file system, and the second way is to backup and restore your configuration from a remote server or to a remote server. Any changes you make to the switch settings will be applied to the running configuration and are not saved when the switch is rebooted. If you are sure that all the settings are correct and you want them to persist after the system reboot, you can use the copy running config to startup config command to overwrite the startup config. Then, the next time the switch reboots, it will use the same configuration. Edgecore Switch also supports backup running configuration as a file and stored in local flash memory. The saved file can be applied to running config directly or specified as a startup configuration when the system reboots. Here is the CLI example of how to backup the running config to a local flash memory with the file name test.cfg. It is better to save the changes for future management. The saved configuration can be restored if you need to reboot the device or if you accidentally clear the settings. In the previous slide, we used the copy command to back up the configuration file to the switch's flash memory, and then, we can use the dir command to display the file list in the flash memory. You can see the test.cfg which we saved in the previous step. If you want to activate the saved config file without rebooting the device, you can use the copy file running config command and then enter the file name that you saved in the local file system. Once the configuration file is restored successfully, you will see the console login prompt and you will need to log in again with your username and password. To restore a specific configuration file, we can use the boot system command with the file name as an argument, and then reboot the system. The configuration will be restored after the system restarts. Besides the local file system, Edgecore Switch also supports backing up the configuration to an external server. In this example, we used the copy running config TFTP command to save the running configuration to a remote server. We need to enter the IP address of the TFTP server and the file name that we want to use. Alternatively, we can also use FTP or SCP to back up the configuration to different types of servers. If you want to restore the configuration from the external server, you can copy file from the remote server via different file transfer protocols. For example, TFTP, FTP, or SCP. In this example, we could restore the configuration from the TFTP server. We can use the copy TFTP running config command, then enter the IP address of the TFTP server and the file name that you want to restore. Once the configuration file is restored successfully, You will see the console login prompt and you will need to log in again with your username and password. In this section, we will show you how to reset our device to factory default configuration and how to reboot our switch. The file named factory_default_config.cfg contains all the system default settings and cannot be deleted from the system. We can restore system settings by using the boot system command and assign the factory_default_config.cfg to be the boot file. If the system is booted with the factory default settings, the switch will also create a file named startup1.cfg that contains system settings for switch initialization. The configuration settings from the factory default configuration file are copied to this file, which is then used to boot the switch. We will have to wait for around 90 seconds until the factory reset is finished. When you see the Finished Provision Complete message, you can use the default username and password to log into the switch. They are both admins. Thank you for joining us. It would be great if you could practice what you have learned in this unit, apply the skills to your own switch, and try to backup and restore the configuration file. This way, you will become more familiar and proficient with these skills, and be able to handle problems more confidently in the future. Let's meet at Unit 2 soon. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact us at any time.